and welcome to another episode of Speculative Speculations. I'm Varsha,
I am Jared.
And I'm Chris.
and this is a series where we talk about speculative stories in all their forms. We are continuing our discussion of Reamde by Neal Stephenson. We have read up to page 230 today, which is the end of day 2, and I meant to pull this up before we started recording. I think next week is the next 100 or so pages.
Yes,
That's what we
360.
intend to read. 60? Just 60?
360. No, it's
360, yeah.
130 pages roughly for next week.
There you go. Approximately 130 pages. The stopping point, as Chris just said, is page 360. The short story for today is going to be I and Gomorrah by Samuel R. Delaney, who is an author we read before, and this short story is going to be interesting to talk about. And the short story for next week is I still haven't. Oh, there you go. I've managed to
Hall
put
of
this.
Machines. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chris. So the Hall of Machines is what we're going to read for next week. Still working our way through the big book of science fiction. That's going to be what we do for at least another year or so.
Mm-hmm.
With some more bookkeeping stuff. We schedule and plan this on the Patreon forum, and I am setting up the episodes. Not that you'll know this until you hear it, but I'm setting up the episodes for release so that at some point we'll catch up and you can read along with us as we record the episodes when that happens. So if you'd like to read any speculative fiction book and even talk to us about them here, please consider checking out the Patreon forum. With that, how did we feel about the second 100 or so pages of Reamde? Polite nods all around. That's a good sign, right?
You go first, Jared. You go first.
I mean, it moved along at a nice pace. It's easy reading. I read through it pretty quickly. It doesn't grab me as anything that like significant or amazing, or it seems like a thriller. Like it's just a big chunky supermarket thriller, and it's like I said, I'm enjoying it. I mean, I think the characters are interesting. They don't seem to be characters that you're going to remember for the rest of your life. They're just there, and there's going to be some kind of convergence at some point. It's odd. That's obvious, but it's so early yet. It's such a big book. It's hard. I think it's kind of difficult to get much out of the 120 pages that we read. A couple of things resolve and a couple more things move along, and there's not much more to it than that, really.
So I thought the problem with this book was going to be, when I looked at it, it was going to be very dense because there's a lot of words on a lot of pages. And I thought, God, this is going to be either information heavy or info dumpy. And certainly there are parts of that. But as you say, Jared, it's completely easy to read. It flows. It reads probably as quick as Clara in the Sun. Like, I have to be honest, and that read really quickly. The major problem I have, and I have to get over myself with this, it's the most preposterous thing I think I've ever read in my entire life that's purporting to be a serious novel. It is just, why are they doing any of it? Like, it just makes no sense to me whatsoever. This flying to China, this bringing a squad of people in order to get the troll because he's wasted money. Like, okay, I'll ask a question because maybe I'm losing my mind about this. So this started because he was trying to regain money with a list of stolen credit card numbers, right? So that was the kind of play by the Russians to cover his losses and stuff. But this operation to China must cost millions with the people that he's done, and the people, like, how much money could they possibly make off stolen credit card numbers?
Hmm.
Like, it's completely and utterly, like, what is happening here? It's like, I don't know. It's like shit, murder in a town full of people to cover one murder.
There's got to be something more to it.
Yes.
There got to be.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
Sorry, one of the missing ingredients that we don't know enough about is what was in the files that
Yes.
got encrypted, and maybe that's what's throwing all this expense at it. But yeah, I think I'm kind of with you. There is a certain, at least so far, turn your brain off
Yeah.
element to it. Yeah, and I don't know how much you can get out of doing credit card fraud, and what and even what you can do with it, because you don't get cash, right? You can only make
Yeah.
purchases. So unless there are ways to use credit cards in nefarious ways, maybe it will go back to the game again, because well, I don't know, there are self-sustaining accounts. Maybe there's ways you can use credit cards to make purchases and mule monies.
Yeah, but it also strikes me that they were on the progress to paying the $73 to get the files back, and they just abandoned that to go fly and bring a squad of people to China to explore and live here for ages and pay people off, and like the whole thing is just, it's like the worst type of crime novel, and like these things are sort of supposed to be set in the today, in the real world, and it's like things that nobody would actually do or the way people would think, and that way, regardless of how nefarious and bad these people are, mafia or otherwise, it's just like, what? What is happening here? Like, there's loads of that. Now, what I will say is, what the thing that I am finding really interesting is the design of Tyrion and the thought process of how they build the structure in that kind of world. Like, weirdly, the actiony stuff is like switch your brain off, just let the story flow over you. And then once they get into the like nuts and bolts of how they decided to build the MMORPG and the bit about the story and how they built the story and stuff, I thought was really interesting about how they the community subverted good versus evil. That stuff's really interesting. And like usually in the book it's the other way around. You're like, oh, we don't need all this, it's too much information. But this stuff's really kind of meaty, I think, compared to what is kind of very natural thrillerish, as you say, Jared.
Yeah, and the relationship between him, what's his name? Drawing a blank. The main character, Richard, and Skrelin is funny. It's fascinating.
Yes,
you know,
yeah.
their relationship where he holds up the sign.
I love that.
That was
Off Devon.
And so yeah, their relationship is interesting, you know, and how they work through things and stuff. Yeah, so you're right. Those were character moments that were amusing and they were funny. It almost makes you wish there was something. Maybe if it was a sci-fi comedy based upon this world building thing, you might have something there. But the thing is though, the scary parts, the action parts, if it wasn't like you said, the ridiculousness of just going after credit card numbers, which I suspect it's got to be something more.
Something else, yeah.
There's something deeper here that we don't know about yet, because that is genuinely tense stuff. Like, what's going to happen to these to Zula and Peter, yeah, and even the new guy, Chonger, yeah, whatever his name was, yeah. You know what the mystery of what's going to happen to them is thrilling, even though it doesn't make any sense that they're actually there. But that's you know.
Put on the hoodie.
Sorry, I didn't hear that last.
Said, put on your hoodie, as he said to Zulu, you know, his black hoodie that he had on. This isn't my style, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I like the word that they used in conjunction with Skrelin and what's his name, Richard. He says he conveniently ascended into flow state 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious. They left an FAQ there with about
flow status and research pertaining to. Yeah, I thought that was quite good.
Yeah, there is certainly an aspect of it that doesn't take itself too seriously, which I think is carrying forward for me into the narrative with Zula and others too. I don't know if that's intended, but yeah, so far they are scared for their life, but we aren't reading enough about that, except maybe with Zula. But Peter's more interested in solving the problem, and Yeah, what was I gonna say? I agree with you. Like, why did they completely abandon the quest to try and get the encryption key? Like, sure, they want to kill this guy because apparently, he got fucked. But like, why would why would you stop the other thing, right? On the
Yeah,
off chance that you get back the encryption keys. Like, we don't know enough yet about what's going on. If anybody's managed to retrieve their keys, if you do manage to hand them off the the money, maybe they're willing.
yeah. I've got a question for you, Varsha. As somebody that works in software, right? So
Hmm.
there's some of this doesn't either make sense to me either. And maybe this could be a 2025 thinking of a 2005 problem or whenever this was written, right? So you've got a game that large numbers of people are being affected by ransomware, and ransomware effectively locks out your computer, and nobody's worried about it in a in a thing. Plus, the exploit is with Outlook, so it's really nothing.
Yeah.
Is it the plugin that's been written for Outlook or something that's creating an exploit or something? Or I mean, it doesn't seem like that's actually right. If you know what I mean, it just seems like a convenient sort of
Hmm.
ploy. I don't know if that made that irked you a little bit, but again, you're trying to make sense. To me, this book reads like it was written for people that work in software. If you know what I mean, this literally, I think
Yeah.
that's the target audience of this, and then put the thriller bit on top, and you get to kind of mash up both things. But I don't know.
I'm trying to think. So I think a lot of viruses and so on were transferred through email before
Mm-hmm.
links with bad
Yes. Yep.
things became a thing. And around the time this book was written, if I remember correctly, email was still a pretty significant way to transfer viruses. So and you, but we all had those scanners, and I don't know whether they got what kind of vulnerability was, like, what exploit was this? It's a
This is
Trojan,
a
right?
this is a it seems to be approaching making ransomware to basically lock out your
Right.
files or lock out your basically your access to your computer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think if you click on the thing or download the thing, it could do damage, but I don't we don't like right now anything. I don't know if this is true for a Windows system because I haven't used one in a
Mm-hmm.
long time, but on the Mac, at least, before any process goes off and does anything on the side, I get a notification saying this process is trying to do something
Yeah,
that it shouldn't,
yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah,
But that wasn't the case, definitely, in 2010. So if you download something that tries
that's right.
to do something that it shouldn't, I don't think you would know about it, except unless the antivirus things are good enough to catch it, which I don't know enough about those to say whether all of these people who play games, I feel like they're tech savvy enough that they would have antiviruses and stuff. They don't seem to be. Like, I've never played games, but I feel like gamers in general tend to be tech savvy. Um,
Well, they do. I mean, and to be fair, if they think they're going to get an advantage, they will download a patch that's an illegal patch off the internet far quicker than random people. So there is a nefarious nature to that. But to me, the exploit is a Microsoft problem with Outlook, except they're claiming it as a Ethereum problem. Anyway, I'm getting caught in the weeds of it.
it was oh, right. It was also like some buffer overflow bug in Outlook itself, right? Not just
Yeah.
email,
So
which
that's the bit that doesn't make sense to me, unless there's a specific plug-in between the game and Outlook, or otherwise that's actually the problem. But anyway, I was getting caught in the weeds of that and going, but this doesn't make any sense, just like a lot of the rest of it and some. And I just kept on having to like pause my audiobook and go, doesn't matter, Chris. This is a stupid thriller. This is
oh,
like a very dumb kind of thrillerish kind of thing in some aspect and way. But yeah,
the connection between the bug and the game was Outlook in the game was explained, I think, a little
Yeah,
bit
Richard explained that. Yeah.
yeah.
with the
So
with the calendar app
yeah.
apparently, which is what they did the gamers got the bug through.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Definitely not worth talking about. But just another like a lot of things just used to irk me about details in this, and I was going, "Stop it, Chris! Just let it go." And
Yeah.
thankfully, the book would give you an action scene not long afterwards. You know, it would give you something that was happening or some sort of character interaction
Mm,
uh, with it. The only other thing that I'll say about the thriller aspect, I do not feel that Zula is under any real threat in this book.
mm, yeah. I mean, I think
Well, she's worried about it though. Like she's more worried about it than Peter is.
Don't mean from their perspective. I mean from the
Yeah,
reader's experience. I mean for us,
yeah,
I don't get the sense that Zula is actually in trouble here, and I think as readers we don't really care about Peter. We don't really care about Younger. We don't really care about. We sort of care about Zula because the story's centered around her. And for this to be effective, I feel that, and maybe this is what's coming. Like we still 800 pages to go. She's going to be under real threat from an outside force that's outside of these people. Maybe that she's with at that stage.
yeah. But maybe it's a result of what, like Vasha said earlier, that where we get the comedy with Richard and how casual his life is, and it kind of spills over when
Yeah.
it goes into the situation with the Russians, and the Russians are played off as a bit funny too. Sokolov's kind of crazy, and uh, and uh, and he plays the gallant sometimes. He plays nice to Zula. So
Mm.
it's yeah, it's maybe that's on purpose. Maybe we're not supposed to get that danger sense pinging off
Yeah.
until it does.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
there was one small moment when I felt a sense of danger, just one, and it didn't carry forward enough. I agree with you. It was when, before, Ivanov was being extra kind to her, buying her flowers and offering her coffee and everything. And then once he kidnapped her, he just walked past her without even acknowledging her existence. So just that, meaning that he did and said what he wanted to do to her. Um, I, I think based on their first interaction, it was easy to think that he's not going to harm this woman unless
Hmm.
things get really bad. But then when he walked past her, it was that was mildly scary for me, that he just said what he thought he could use to manipulate her into doing what he wants.
He definitely plays dumb with her, playing the fool a little bit to see what she ascertains and knows. Like there's that whole thing about the cameras. You know how many cameras there are spotted. It's like the kind of tests and the traps that he got, and then we get this kind of sinister aspect of poor Wallace being carried out in a body bag, murdered for having the worst Scottish accent in the history of existence. Which to be honest, I thought was very just and fair. Um,
Jared called it last week. I mean, I saw that. I think it was last week when they were setting up the plastic around the house, but
yes, it's very Dexter.
I thought it was to beat them up. I didn't think they'd carry a body out of there. Oh man. But one thing that I am sorry, wanting
Clean
to
kill
harp
tactics 101.
I want to harp on the technology stuff a little bit more.
Mm.
Well, two things. One, going back to the bit about the bug, I've seen enough bugs that result from like really stupid things that I'm like, yeah, I believe this. Someone moved the line from line 30 to line 10. Now we broke all of the whole application. That can
Mm-hmm.
happen. But the other thing is, I don't know why they aren't more worried about maybe being attacked themselves, the company, like the game people, because their software is being used for the exploit, and they're, at least what we've gotten visibility into, is their discussion around the optics of it all and how much money they're making off it, rather than their own vulnerability in this situation.
It's almost as if the internet doesn't exist in this time to a certain degree, where people to do discussion. Like I think was Reddit would be having an absolute field day about now. It would be absolutely blowing up. It would be everywhere, and this company would be in big problems. But absolutely nobody's concerned about this whatsoever. Even though there's a full scale war happening on their turf, so to speak. But again, ridiculous aspect of it. He seems to be much more interested in talking about the nuts and bolts of the game rather than actually what would happen in this instance, because like things like this have happened to a certain degree, maybe not in the terms of ransomware, but definitely in terms of wide scale virus infection through a game, and especially through MMORPGs. That has definitely happened before and been a big problem for those companies, because they had to basically stop whatever else they were doing to fix that, and in some cases they just take the game down and go do it. So, like I say, you sort of just have to switch your brain off and say that's not the story you wanted to tell. And he's probably right in a lot of ways, because that would have been very boring.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a nice balance between discussing the software aspects of it, some of which, I'll be honest, I roll my eyes at. But I think he's sort of explaining things to a lay audience who might not be quite as lay as he thought they were in 2010. And I don't know, like, he explained what an IP address is in excruciating detail, for instance. I don't know if that was necessary even in 2010. Definitely not necessary now. So, yeah, I think, I mean, it's not like he explained how it works or anything, or how that's used in the rest of the story. He, like, the 4 numbers that make this up, separated by dots. That
Yeah.
okay, just stop.
I mean, the bit I liked about that part, it gave a sort of explanation of what they were going to do when they got the shaman. You know, this kind of idea that they were going to go around map IP addresses, around blocks and destinations, even, and sort of admitting that it's just buying them time as like an activity that they can show and do and say they're making progress on. I thought that was actually quite clever in some ways, to kind of give it some sort of direction and narrative plot for what they're going to do, rather than we're going to go get this guy. Well, they're saying it's a guy. It's almost certainly, I mean, I'm going to say it's almost certainly the guy who set up the money farms in China is responsible for this. Like, that's almost certainly what's happening here. But I will, you know, it could be something else going on, and I
Yeah,
would
it
say,
has to be more than a coincidence that this is the place that they landed at has exactly the same connections that apparently where they do the money laundering, quote unquote, for the game also has. And it might turn out to be the same place. I don't know if they named it elsewhere, but I think we only heard about Shaman when they decided where to go in China, right? We didn't hear about it in conjunction with the game's backstory. But everything about it screams this is where the money's probably handed off to. So, yeah.
Yeah. We did hear that this is the place where Dutch pirates were
yeah.
chased away.
Again, I really liked all that stuff. That stuff was
Yeah.
really good. The fact that it was kind of like a smuggling haven, that you
Right,
could get
yeah.
kind of get in and out of the country, get out of China quite, not easily, but that was easier here than probably other parts of mainland China and that kind of stuff. Like, every time that happened in the book, I just found I switched on, you know, at that point a lot more, because the rest of the book I'm reading like a crime book that, I mean, it's perfect for an audiobook, because the story and the events can just sort of flow over you really easily, and you never get lost. Like, there's no prospect of you possibly getting lost at that stage. It's just entertaining, kind of fun at that stage. But then you have these moments where you can switch your brain on and go, this is actually stimulating in an intellectual sense, because it's giving me some history or backstory about a place that may or may not be real. I assume it is real, but that has maybe a right history or otherwise. And it's like, right, okay, you're doing a decent bit of world building here, whether it's necessary or not. But it's kind of filling in those blanks a little bit to break the book up.
Yeah. And I was trying to equate that little sense of history of the smuggling harbor to anything they were making up in T-Rain, you know, and trying to correlate that, because then there was another guy mentioned, I think it was his friend Pluto, mentioned something about, you know, scientists are speculating that a piece of the Earth is up there because something
really
banged into the Earth and there's an alien rock somewhere underneath the surface, you know, and I'm like, well, how's that going to relate to terrain and, like, you know, and and so I kind of like that stuff, and I like I like Richard's realization that when he draws conclusions about encountering gamers in the real world, how when he goes back to the board, they just thrust his conclusions aside because they're looking at this big picture and it doesn't match up with the percentages, and it's what do they call that, the anecdotal evidence that he comes up with, and that, like, how many people actually do that? Everybody does that, right? You know, like, you go, oh, every time I go to Lowell I have a problem, or Boston or whatever, but how many millions of people go there without a problem. So it's anecdotal, and he's bringing that up as something that related to the game, and I like how that's discussed, and I thought that's like some of the interesting parts, and how he always avoided using the O word in meetings and stuff like that. The other word, and but it's actually quite an important dilemma happening in the game, and of course in real life too. So
Yeah.
that stuff was all pretty cool, and I enjoyed when little things like that popped up.
Also love the furious muses that are apparently just like living
Muses.
rent free in Richard's head. And FM5 was a comparative literature major, and she wouldn't get through a paragraph without using the word other.
Yeah.
But now he's hearing it from Scraven's mouth.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I think that whole setup for the reason for the war is pretty brilliant, and they could just unplug the whole thing, like he pointed out, but if they navigate it just right, they can stand to win something out of it, and also not destroy the world, which is, yeah, I think that makes for some compelling setup.
Yeah, and it's also true of game design in a lot of ways. Like the whole thing's sort of mimicking World of Warcraft in a lot of ways. This kind of balance versus horde, good versus evil, but actually everybody's just doing fetch quests, and they're doing exactly the same thing. They're not actually good actions, evil actions. They're just kind of they're picking a color essentially, and the game evolved in some way to give something better than that. By basically using cultural relativity. So what way you dress, what way you look, that kind of stuff. And I thought that was very clever, especially when the writer was kind of going, I mean, you've got to admit, it's sort of better than what we came up with. I really like that part of it. And also that leads on to the end of the very last sentence of this entire chapter. It says, well, what happens if one wipes out the other one? It says, well, they end up killing themselves. It's sort of ominous, isn't it, in terms of
Yeah.
we have a story that's now happening within the game that has been running for a long time, and we have these problems outside the game that seem to be, again, unconnected, but I think it's safe to say they will become interconnected as we go through the story, and so it gives it some sort of propulsion and some sort of tease of the fact that there's way more going on here than we have an idea of at this time.
Here's a question. What does one side wiping out the other side look like? Because apparently you don't die, you just hang out in limbo and you come back. So when would this war ever end?
Well, again, they haven't spelled this out exactly, but because the gold is naturally occurring within the game that they've set up, you could just hoard all the resources. So somebody could win by basically just having all the resources kind of locked up to the point that there's no point playing as the other faction. Do you know what I mean? You're not getting any loot drops, you're not getting any progression, you're not getting your endorphin hit from that if you lock up the fact that the resources are being held by one faction. And then, while those people will keep on respawning, there's no progress or fun happening for them anymore. They're outnumbered and whatever else, and so they culturally being downtrodden at that stage.
Yeah, eventually you get to the point where you're signing on and you're getting killed, and that's it. And so something has to evolve out of that eventually once the conflict gets too one-sided. Yeah.
Interesting. So then, okay, help me understand this about how devoted people are about the sides they support in games. So right now it's just a matter of colors, right? And let's say the other side wins big.
And race. So it seems to be, the old Tolkien archetypes are like aligned with one side, and then other people that are like in the garish colors and all that kind of stuff are in the other side. Sort of like freedom of expression. That seems to be. So while it is colors, it's also like classic D&D classes and that kind of stuff as well. It seems to be tied up in.
Got it. So, okay, so this might be a stupid question, but why wouldn't they eventually maybe just switch over to the other side?
I mean, that is actually what happened. People just create a new character and go to the other side. But at that point, the conflict's dead. And the thing that's keeping the thing alive, and this is where I think Richard's coming from and Devon are coming from, they're basically saying, right, we're making a lot of money at the moment, and the shareholders will not like us making any change because we're making so much money. And this is actually, I think, very true of a lot of game development at this stage. It's run by venture capitalists and shareholders who are trying to extract the maximum amount of money per year with the idea that it will die someday. Whereas the people that are creating it actually want it to live and need it to evolve. So there's always this conflict within games development of this needs to change, this is a lifespan, and the shareholders who actually control this thing going, no, but we're going to keep it, and we're just, we don't care actually if this dies out in the long run. People like what they're doing when we're making more money. Just keep going it because they'll just move on to the next thing. And so you're going to get this conflict between shareholders and development as it comes. And the game, and that's why games naturally die out and oftentimes because they don't change enough. To meet that kind of demand of the player, because there's always something new and shiny that will attract people.
So in the game, they should just call one faction shareholders and one faction writers.
In some way, yeah, that would be accurate.
Yeah. So where I was going with that question though was, like, right now it's a very superficial thing that you don't really need to express a sense of loyalty to. But I guess the character, the kind of character you are, that might maybe create some basis for it. But I was saying you also need some principles to fight for, right? And I wonder if they've already developed those or if they will, so that this becomes a more bloody war.
It might just be, again, if the whole fight and one wipes out the other one, then the people that are left are still going to be fighting over the same resource, and they'll not just be freely sharing it, because that's not human nature. So that's where I think the aspect of they'd kill each other and they'll turn on each other will go, and it'll probably be subsections or subfactions within each of those things. It almost strikes me as something like Warhammer 40K in some ways. You know, all these people they're all kind of run about in suits, but they're all from different factions and legions and slightly different beliefs and that kind of stuff, and sort of fight the Chaos Marines and stuff are fighting, you know, people that are like them in a lot of ways and some ways. So I mean, I can definitely see that happening, but as we say, the interesting part is how does this bleed into the main story, or the real world story, and what happens, especially about Richard. Richard seems sort of the character in the middle of this, in that he straddles both, because he's got a relationship to Zula that he now knows he's covering for, and then he's working on the development side as that guy. So he seems to be the crux of the bit that will sort of hold this together. And when he finds out Zula's missing, and they try and do some investigation, maybe that's when it starts to tie together.
Yeah. Well, I like the fact that he said that she was on a mission doing something, but she may have gone a little off script.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the way he kind of covered. But that should put a little light bulb in his head, saying, "I wonder what is going on with her." You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's interesting stuff. I like.
Same. And Richard was formerly a dangerous guy, right? We've got all of this stuff set up with his background, and they're all apparently good at using guns. Peter included, maybe.
Yeah.
But at least he learned a bit during that time on the ranch at Thanksgiving. But shifting gears a little bit, what do you guys think of the Apis stuff? That one was, I found that vaguely fascinating, to use the game as an API.
Well, not just that, Varsha, but the fact that they were making the API, but it was for marketing purposes. Like, that whole thing it wasn't actually that they wanted to make money out of it. It was literally to get people talking about the value of theory into society, which I thought is a pretty big idea. Really well executed within the text. Again, kind of just leaving that in there and making that the discussion. I really like that discussion as well. Again, another one of those kind of asides, but has real thought and depth in it.
Yeah, I like that. I always like things where you start out building it for this one reason, and then you can expand the scope, and these other things just work, or you're able to do them easily. That speaks to me. I like this this setup for it, and I like that was kind of the source for the vulnerability or exploit as well, because that's what allowed them to build the calendar plugin, which eventually apparently created a bunch of
problems.
Yeah,
but again, the explanation of how they used that, but the airport security and stuff, I thought was really clever. Like, they had the guy on the door, and the guy on the door was kind of not well trained enough to spot for the exception. He was just kind of going through the motions, and then using the example of artificially putting things into the airport scanners to keep people on their toes. So to protect for the one thing that happens in 5 years, to make it happen regularly enough that people had to check and be like. I thought that discussion was really clever, and how they would went and use it.
Yeah, I also liked how I guess it was the engineers were pointing out that you don't need the humans anymore if if you're smart enough to
That's right.
detect. You're smart enough to just alert. We don't need the human, and management is like, shh, we don't want them to know that.
It's marketing. Yeah. Well, they were thinking, we could save money by cutting the humans out of it. But again, the whole purpose was not to generate necessary revenue for the company, even though it was doing it was for marketing, as the thing. And again, very interesting idea that from a business point of view.
Yeah. And are there any real games that do that? Do they allow like plugins and stuff which
interface
you
with the
can
real
use for other
world?
things?
I was trying to think at the time. I can't think directly. Like, I know PlayStation 3 had that whole building at home where they were basically using people's PlayStations in idle mode to use processing power. So they were letting research institutes use the processing power of people's idling PlayStations to solve real world process where they basically just need a brute power. So basically, having a big massive network of powerful processors as they were back in those days to kind of work away. I don't think that happens anymore, but that was an idea at the time of basically, gamers can do good. And again, I think that was very much a marketing thing for them as well, as I say, gaming is for this and it is a dredge in society. Violent video games are a problem at that stage. But actually, here's a narrative that paints it in a slightly different light. So it might have come from that idea, actually.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because it's sort of socially useful things that they're doing with Terrain, right? Which take a PlayStation and use it for university research. Yeah, that's a
Exactly right.
cool idea.
Well, it's like I don't know. This is going very inside baseball. So this is there is a search for the largest prime number at all times, right? So, and it's basically there's a very simple like code program that you can run on any machine, but again, it's a brute force operation in terms of like you throw more computing power at it, you will eventually get through more numbers and more things to check.
I
So
see.
there was is it Missouri? Central Missouri. Guy came in as like the head of maths or whatever, and he says, "Look, can I see all the computers that are idling at night in this university? Can I use them every night to basically run these searches in the background? Because again, if we find the next prime number, the prestige that it will bring for the university will be massive." And he actually, over a 8 to 10 year period, was the person that found it, or because he talked the whole university into using all the computer labs in the university to do this. And then other people, I think, caught on. So he was literally Optimus Prime for a while, and then I think the guy quite famous at the moment is a guy called Jonathan Pace, who's a chicken farmer in Kentucky. He's the last guy to find it. So there you go.
Damn, I thought we were going to be talking about baseball. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so bummed I missed most of that story because my internet was breaking up. Now I have to now I'll re-listen to the episode.
I can fill you in anytime you like.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask you after we finish recording. Yeah.
That's funny.
What else was interesting in these chapters? I feel like not much happened, which makes sense because it's a 1,000-page novel. I feel like we'd be in setup mode at least until page 400 or even 600 until things start crashing down.
Yeah, it's interesting because of that, because like I thought the same thing as well. They kind of just have a discussion in the apartment, fly to China, and do some early investigating in China. 110
That's
pages.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess when people move around a lot, it adds up. I don't know. I'm trying to think because the Wheel of Time books are what come to mind in terms of how much people move around and how thick they are. And it feels like I've read 600 pages, but I don't. I feel like I can summarize everything that happened in 5 sentences. Um, I don't mean that as a dig on it. It just feels like there's a lot of associated backstory and description and so on that, yeah, I don't know.
It
And
sounded
it's
like
not
a
like
bit of a dig.
it is a little bit. I
There's a lot of
didn't mean
wasted
it.
space. Yeah, it's a lot of wasted space in those books as well.
There's I guess it's more that it's not setting up any like difficult philosophical questions or like anything that you sort of grapple with. There are some interesting game dynamics. There's some things that relate to real world technology and conundrums around the use of tech and maybe games here, but there's not a whole lot around, say, the human condition that we can discuss here.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, just to touch on something that you talked about, Jared, in your little reading wrap up, it's not very sci-fi. It's a book about
No.
computing.
Yeah.
At the moment, and guns. Computing and guns and cyber warfare. There's literally nothing science fiction outside of that. There's nothing kind of that is preposterous or speculative, really, in a lot of that, because a lot of the stuff was existing and is existing still in the world.
Yeah. So far, it's a techno thriller, as far as I can tell. But
Yep, I would agree with that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
which is still speculative, so we're okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Got the right category. Alright. Are we ready to move on to that short story nobody knows to summarize? Speaking of summaries.
What? It's
my
pretty
God.
simple, really. The story
Yeah.
is people go up, people come down. There you go.
Okay. That's it. All right.
So yeah, it's a discussion about, again, gender identity, kind of sexual relationships between people that are of different sexual backgrounds, but without any depth or any exploration. People just have conversations about it, and there seems to be some weird social interactions that are caused because of the split in society. So between the spacers, who, as far as I can make out, are people who have had the sexual organs removed.
Yeah, and they explain it as something that has to do with their ability to basically teleport up into space and
Yeah.
back down.
So they swap the sexual organs for superpowers, which, I mean, I think once you hit 50 might be, very desirable.
You want to go to space, Chris?
Yeah.
I mean, not particularly, but anyway. And then the Frelkers, who are gender normal in some way, although they do include homosexuality and stuff in it within that stage. So, yeah.
It's basically, yeah, the Frex, who I guess were Earthlings, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
The Frex just wanted to explore the space guys. Basically,
Yeah.
that's what it was. And it was, yeah, it was kind of strange. I mean, I just I thought it was clever the way he introduced the whole, they came down in Paris. That's like the first
Yes.
word. And you're
Then
like,
they're in Houston.
what's up with
And then,
that?
yeah.
And all of a sudden, they went up again, and they're down in Houston. They go up again, and they're in Istanbul and what have you. And you're like, okay, so these people have some sort of, we may have called it, when this was written, we may have called it jaunting,
Yes,
based
indeed.
on
Yeah.
Bester's book there, and other books that used that later on. But so that was like, okay, so you get there's the concept, there's the sci-fi concept that these spacers can go up into space and come back down, and they're doing something up there that's productive and what have you, and they come down, and I guess that when they come down, they're kind of on their day off or whatever, and they're having fun, and 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 there's a little conversation between a couple of them. They're trying to figure things out about life and, sexuality and, what, how they view each other and stuff. And that's it.
pretty much the whole story. Of all the stories I've read, I don't know whether it's just that it doesn't have more ideas kind of floating about it. It does remind me of Babel 17. It definitely does. There's no doubt about that. Because Babel 17 takes a sort of singular idea about how do we mess with people's language instead of sexuality or that kind of stuff, and sort of riffs on that over a whole book as well. And there's no doubt that Delaney has an interesting style about how he goes about all that, because it is kind of, it's not easy to read. I would kind of surmise in much the same way as Babel 17 wasn't easy to read, but it doesn't mean that you can't derive a lot of meaning from how he does, because I think he's a lot of really good ideas and interesting ideas, especially for the time that he was writing in. So, yeah, it's one of those. I sort of know that this is his shtick or his style, from having done the short story and the novel.
Sometimes I think the problem with the way he approaches what he does is he kind of bangs you over the head a lot with the same line of questioning, like when the guy kept asking the Freck, "What are you gonna give me? What are you gonna give me? What are you?" And it's just like over and over again, and over and over again. She's like, "I'm not giving you money. I'm not giving you money," and and he's just like, "Where's he going with that?" And it just ends up being kind of nothing, and it's like, it's a neat concept, and it's a neat concept that they would have this lack of understanding with each other about what they want from each other, and that there's norms for this kind of thing, that other people don't ask these questions, they just do it, but then it doesn't resolve in a way that gives you any kind of, like, the characters themselves don't have any kind of epiphany or something greater to say than the stuff that was put out in front of you. And I felt that way. With Babel 17 as well. I was kind of like, I need a little more. I need a little more than the idea, I guess.
Yeah, I think I maybe agree with that. I don't really it didn't feel like it was exploring this subject, but it didn't even feel like one of those things where a situation is presented to you and you map it. Like, if you think about it long enough, you can map it to a real world problem and then say, oh, how silly of us to behave in this manner, right? It's ostensibly about the judgment for choosing who you love, right? Or who for your sexual preferences, pretty much, which you could theoretically map it to, I guess, the sort of stigma that I'm sure was present at the time and is present to a great extent now too around, say, homosexuals. But it's not, for me, presented in a way that's making me think hard enough about the problem. Like, I don't. Like, it's not saying, oh, this is stupid, so our judgment of people now in the real world is stupid too. This, I don't feel like that's there, and I don't know if I'm missing it or if it's just not there. Which I think Delaney was a homosexual author, and he probably dealt with discrimination because of that. So I'm curious about what he was trying to do with the story. I don't think it. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously not speaking out against them, but I don't know that it reads very sympathetically either, and I don't think that's intended. I don't know what I'm missing from it.
Yeah, I think this was his first published work. And I think I get the sense, especially through this, that he was maybe just trying to explore the idea of sexuality and stuff in stories, because this was probably published again in one of the sci-fi magazines or something like that at the time, to kind of generate kind of representation or something at that point. But it's kind of, you're both kind of hitting the same thing for me, which is he puts these bits in that you think are deeper explorations of a theme that he's doing, but it just left me with the idea that there was something that was missing. That kind of stuff about the exchange of money. He repeated it so often that you're kind of thinking, oh, there's another meaning that he must be trying to get at here that I'm either too stupid to get, or that that there's another level to this that I'm missing, because it's sort of come away unfulfilled, a bit like you said, Varsha, in terms of like it's not deep enough. It's not multi-layered enough, and of course, like it's only 5-6 pages, so it's not. But as we've seen beforehand, you can very much do that as well, and leave people with thinking points rather than kind of just tell what you want in 5 and just cut it dead, because it sort of ends with this idea, oh, there's a bar you can go to, blah blah blah, but it's actually of your own people, and it says, oh, I met friends there. Basically, is what it said, and they talk then about how the going rate in other parts of the world is better off, so they'll be better off going to another part of the world, which I thought was okay, strange. Maybe the idea that if you could travel about anywhere, they're still going to go to the place with the best rate. I don't know. Maybe that's what they're going for. They traded their sexual organs for this ability but they're still sort of linked to commerce or something. I don't know. I'm really trying to extrapolate at that point, because it didn't maybe get as much out of it as other stories, let's say.
Yeah. There was one almost aha moment that, again, it didn't conclude for me, was when he says that's a Fred bar, and then I think she says no, it's a spacer bar. So it's like a little bit of, it depends on which side you're looking at it from, because it seems like where the spacers are, there Freds may also be found, and
Yes.
that, like, they think that they're finding people of the opposite side, or each thinks that this is where the others hang out.
Mhm.
Maybe there's some commentary there on, people are not different even though you make them out to be, because
Could
there
be.
is stigma and shame associated with both groups of people, right?
Yes.
So maybe there's something there, but again, it just went to the edge of making that point and stopped. So that, yeah, it still wasn't very
Yeah.
satisfying for me.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else about the story or Reamde before we wrap up?
No. Looking forward to continuing
Cool.
on in Reamde, seeing where it
Yes.
goes. It's going to be a bubblegum read for me, I think, for the next couple of weeks, which pretty much fits into like summer reading plans, I think, for enough
Yeah.
of people as well. So I think it does
Sure.
fit quite nicely
Yeah.
there, because we also have some other heavier reads.
We got
more
some
kind of
doozies,
yes. So
Yeah.
it's actually come at the perfect time, I think, in an awful lot of ways.
Yes, I think Destiny's Conflict and Song of Mysteries promise to ring our hearts. Memories of Ice, I know, will ring mine. So I
Yeah.
could do with some Reamde
Yeah.
in
Midnight
between.
Children's Dance
Midnight
as well.
Children
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
whoa,
Yeah.
Yeah.
very dense.
Excellent. So we'll see everybody next week with sections day 3 and day 4 of Reamde, and the short story The Hall of Machines by Langdon Jones. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon. Bye.